Good evening, everybody. Jason Meyer here. Hope you guys are doing well tonight. Oh, that's right. Tom's the first to say hi. Nice job, buddy. Nice job. Good to see you. Tonight we're going to look at a few landscapes and we're going to talk about silhouettes and dark silhouettes. We'll be looking at Daniel Garber and, is it Garber or Graber? Garber. And Albert Bierstadt, and then also a Russian or a Ukraine painter that I was unable to locate their name in time for the show, but we're going to put it in anyway. Magical place. We're going to go to dark silhouette land tonight, and our last one will be magical indeed. So let's head over to the photographs and see what we can get into tonight. So our first artist we're going to look at is Daniel Garber. He's an American artist. And like always, just take a minute to take this in. I think it's always a good idea is just to look first. Don't try to analyze. Just look. This morning in student feedback, we looked at some reference images from a program in Africa. There were some elephants and trees. And then I talked about the elephants as a dark silhouette. And then I also talked about how we could have a dark silhouette foreground that frames the elephants. So we wanted to talk a little bit about that tonight. So just in case anybody is new here, and I say that because when I first started painting, I could not see light from dark. And I'm not saying that to be funny. I literally could not see the light versus the shadow. So, but if we look up here, do you see all of this is dark? And yeah, there's a little bit of light, but when you compare that to this back there, this is going to be a little darker, richer, and they're just small touches of that. Overall, this is just a dark silhouette. Even that is dark. Right? So notice there's really no white in these colors. And then everything behind it has some white in it. More or less. And then even with this back here, notice the shadows stick together. And we'll see that in a minute. We'll see that in a minute. All right, I think it's a little easier to see the forms of the trees. And that light dark pattern and how effective it is. The strength of value. Okay, so we're going to move on. And what I'd like to do now is we're going to look at basically the same scenario, but at a completely different measure. And what I mean by that is that our dark isn't going to be quite as dark as this, quite as heavy, but it's still a dark on a light. Okay? So what would this in a different measure be? So this was Daniel Garber. No? Maybe? There it goes. All right. So again, before we talk about this, take just a minute and look, just take it in and experience it. And unfortunately, I did not find this artist's name before broadcast. If anybody knows it, let me know. Or if I find it, I'll put in the description afterwards. But I'm pretty sure this is a living either Russian or Ukrainian artist. Don't have sound. Okay, anybody else doesn't have sound? You have to let me know. It's showing that I've got sound here, but that doesn't mean that I do. So even though these are white birch trees, it's still a dark when compared to the sky. A dark compared to the sky. All right. Well, I don't think it's going to do good to give him suggestions if he can't hear us. But hopefully he came through, or maybe he'll rejoin. All right, he's back up and running. Excellent. Excellent, excellent. So can you guys see that even though they're quote unquote white birch trees, they're acting as darks against these green fields and against the sky? You see it a little? So again, this is still we're looking through a dark into the light behind it. And so this light dark pattern is more abundant. You see how the bottom's a shadow and the tops are leaves? And so we're like looking through almost a slit, a little window. And then even in that window, we've got these dark vertical tree trunks cutting out. So we're drawn past that out into the light. I think my computer's tired of reminding me. So I didn't want to spend too much time on these first two, and I think when you see our last one, you'll understand why. But again, I wanted this idea of a dark silhouette, and it goes back to our first principle that we use, right? To make it visible. Light against dark. Shakti made it. Hi, Shakti. We were just looking at silhouettes tonight. Lights against darks. And although these are white trees, they look like darks against that. Okay. So you guys ready? You might want to get up and stretch for this one. I'm going to see if I can keep my composure, but I go crazy over this. So next up is Albert Bierstadt. And anyway, let me let you take this in before I put my 2 cents on it. Take a minute and take this in. There's seemingly a lot going on. Yeah, right? And a lot of his paintings, I don't remember exactly, but a lot of his paintings are very large, or some of them are anyway. But he would do these epic paintings of the American West and the Rockies. So let's just look in black and white before we go too much, then we'll switch back and forth here. Does that help you see the pattern a little bit? Yeah, maybe even sideways might be better. But we have to kind of go past and through that dark to get up into the light. Can you see that? You know, we've got many reads we can do here. So we could read this all as a dark, which it is. But even within this, there's dark, light, dark silhouettes that happen to be deer standing in a lake. You can tell we don't have alligators in our lakes. And then there's even a dark, by having light behind that, that becomes a dark silhouette, right? So we have dark, light, dark, light, dark, light. Same thing over here. We can find birds here. We've got these trees silhouetted against that light on the water. Go through the dark, bouncing. All right. Let's go in a little bit, shall we? So here we are in the bottom corner. And again, even though it's organized real big, look how much is going on here. We've got a creek flowing out into the lake. Is that deer or elk? I don't know. Some woodland quadruped. Looks like there's ducks or something swimming. And how does this movement go? Does he take you through the dark with the light? And does that light hug that shore? Stop. Start to run up the tree. And then what about this over here? We talked about these silhouettes. How is that? You see that big? Now again, does this dark shape stop at the tree? Does it connect more than one tree? So the dark is transcending, and even as it's transcending and holding on as a big dark shape, even within this dark shape, he has near and back and back and back and back and back and back. So this one dark shape contains how many layers of trees? So again, if you can control your measure, it's kind of how many times can you do this? And then look how the silhouette, well, we could look at all of those silhouettes. How these silhouettes differ from this silhouette, differs from this silhouette. There's a few shapes for you. There's a few shapes for you. And look how mysterious this is left. Do these guys staring over here have any power? Of course it does. So then coming this way out the side, this is like a dark silhouette on the side, and then we spill into the light. And then look, we've got dark and light till we go back to the next layer. And back to the next layer. And back to the next layer. And then we can crawl up, but we keep going back. And back. And back. And back. And back. And back. And back. How far back do we go? Oh my gosh. I hope you brought a sandwich. That's going to take us a while. But is this all outlined? No, how much of this do you see before it goes vague? What about over here? Where does it go vague? Where does this one go vague and that start to be clear? Anyway, lots and lots of questions, but I hope you see this is simply a repeating light-dark pattern. I say simply a repeating light-dark pattern. There's nothing simple about this whatsoever, but it is still just a light-dark pattern, and that's where the visibility comes from. What do you guys see on here? You have any questions on this so far? Are some of you familiar? I know I've shown this in my class many times, but especially how we're talking and about these values and how one value can be stretched and can be like a note. Like how many of our paintings are in here? For instance, who would just die and go to heaven right now if they did that? If they did this painting? Just this right here. Oh my God, that's the best thing. Okay. And how many of us would just die and be done if we could paint a couple of trees like that? Yep, I'm good. Retirement, here I come. Or silhouettes, or waterfalls, or clouds. Right? And he's put it all into one. What do you guys think? Are we brave enough to try to find how our light path through here? You've already found it? Thanks, but I've already got it. All right. Can you see some big movements? This feels like a movement. Does it not? And again, how did he keep you? Well, he's got little specks of white next to darks. All right, white. Are we going to follow the white? And then look at the deer's reflection in the water. It's not dark, but it's color. And that's how he said water rather than land. But we keep going, but we're obviously going to slow our pace right here. So he's controlling the pace. Is this just one wave crashing on the open? A single white line? Boom! No, 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 no. He has you meandering. You're probably meandering up. Wow. In the creek. Can we hang out here for the day? And then back. So all that's just part of this one simple movement. But what I've been trying to teach is this movement. You've got to put that in first. Then whatever you want on top of it, put it on top of it. You know, an epic landscape, right? A dancing girl's arm. It doesn't matter. Amazing. Yeah, I mean, it's without a doubt, it's amazing. You know, and it's funny. In his day, some of the critics lauded him as what should we say? Just showboat and loud. They thought his paintings were just too much. Just too much. I wonder what those critics would say about our movies today if this was too much. Just to go to show you how. Now, it's grand, right? The grandeur. I mean, there's no denying that. But I don't know. If you can handle it this well, I think you can pull off too much. You can pull off too much. So that's really all I have for tonight. And sometimes you want to get in there and analyze, and sometimes, you know, you just want to look. But when you do this, how has he divided the canvas? While we look, let's just look a little bit longer and ask ourselves some questions. This green up front, is it repeated anywhere else? Look, it starts on the grass, and we see some in the water on the deer, and it even runs up some of these front trees. But then that's it, isn't it? It's grouped, and then from the color, that green color, and then what's the lake? If the green is the grass, the lake is, well, I see it as a purple, a gray purple. And of course there's reflections there. So we've got green and purple. All right, so I see, I see all of this are green. See it release. Even a little bit of green up here. A little purple. And then the whole thing goes through this dark. So you see how that even reads like it's further away, but technically, do you see how straight across here, that's a continuation of a dark note running all the way across? Right, we're involved in that. Can you see that as a dark note? And then he throws it across. And look, is this over here connected to this? Well, it really is, isn't it? And that's pretty incredible because he's used this as a silhouette, but it's in one sense background because it's across the lake. And then he was able to bring that forward. I don't know if you guys can appreciate that. He's doing some tricky stuff here. Tricky, but it's all based on these principles. And Susan, you said the other day is you feel like you're getting it, and sometimes you feel like you lose it. And this guy's the perfect example for that, because everything makes perfect sense, but at the same time it's like, how did you come up with that? How did you find that? Should we go through the mountains a little bit? My computer doesn't want to work for me. Come on. Come on, just a minute longer. You can do it. There we go. So we talk about darker, richer to lighter, grayer. And look how he's done that here. And then it's almost like they reset back here again, isn't it? Boom. And so this is kind of the lightest as it gets. And then it goes through a shadow. Do you see that? Do you see how that subtle shadow there helps this really stand out? This stands out because it's between two shadows. And it too has light and shadow. Same thing here. Light and shadow, but at a lesser measure than here, and a much lesser measure than the shadow, light, weaker, shadow, light, weaker. Right, then eventually the light and shadow just becomes a single silhouette in the far distance. And then over there, here the fog clears. Is that a stronger shadow and light than here? Is that stronger than here? Well, maybe when you have snow up there. So Susan asks, as the darker red goes into the lighter gray, is that done by adding more than one hue? Well, there's many ways of doing it. And I can't tell you exactly how he did it. But generally there is kind of a bouncing. It's not so much a bouncing back and forth as a lean one way and lean another, if that makes sense. Right? So our grays, if we have a green gray, it can lean yellow or it can lean blue, right? And it can also lean or go more neutral or more intense. And so you can think about every color can basically go in those four directions in a two-dimensional way, and then lighter and darker in the third dimension. So I don't know on here, to be honest with you. And again, if another hue is added, it's for that lean, right? To lean it this way and lean it that way. Does that make sense? Because, you know, I can say that this leans purple and this leans yellow, but if we took these colors out and matched them on the Procreate, you would be going, how do you get purple out of that? How did you get yellow out of that? Well, it's the relationship, and it's because that gray's leaning that direction. Okay, good. I'm really hoping to get into some of that once I get through the technical difficulties and using the 4 cameras in the studio. I have high hopes that we're going to have some great afternoons in here, our lessons that way. But I'm still struggling a bit on getting those set up. But those are great questions. Right? And you can see how there's no color in this area, right? Now it feels like that sky is blue. Right? It feels like there's some yellow in the sky, and that's because those grays are leaning that direction and there's no other color back here competing. So when there's no color competing, that gray can see brighter color. But if this was up on top of here or on top of this green, woo, boy howdy, right? Boy howdy. By the way, when I say look at light white shapes, what's your white shape? What is his white shape doing? You see that? And is there a most here? Isn't it interesting? He has most right here, and then and then it starts dying off. Right? Compare that to this. Can you see how drastically that dies off? And then if that's the brightest there, it's very subtle, but and this is joined to, well, that waterfall, and this is joined to that run of light and that waterfall, and it's almost makes it over here, but we've kind of got to go through some nothingness before we're back up on it. And again, look at this trailing white shape. Right? I mean, the whole thing overall is just absolutely overwhelming. But, but what you could do is you could study little sections and you can begin to understand. Right? So what is this dark shape? Right? The lightest light's running right through here. And then how does the top of this differ from the bottom of this? Right? I mean, they're silhouette. Look how there's the dark, and then slowly they just merge into the water. This deer is coming out of the trees of that bush. Right? You see this dark here. And so these darks just aren't out in the middle of nowhere. They're connected. You want to learn how to draw old gnarly trees? Well, sketch those. Anyway, I mean, and then we can talk about the red, gray, and the purple here versus the blue there. Right? And why did that have to be red? Well, to make the green jump. And by the way, these reproductions that we see on screens are very seldom like really, really accurate. So, yeah, that's exactly it, Susan. Cut it into 8 pieces, and each piece alone would be... Yeah. So when something's overwhelming like this, just take bite-sized pieces of it and look at, because there's so much to learn here. All right. Why don't we have one last look at the value. Right? And when it's small sometimes too, I actually, a lot of times if I'm able to, oops, this one won't let me, is I actually shrink it down small, really, really small, so we can see what's actually going on. Right? What are the big movements? Can you clearly see, man, we got a light there. Remember earlier I was talking about that? And so it's like we've got one S curve around. But is it straight? No, we kind of go as we're hauling around the corner, kind of slide out before we're definitely going to be drawn back into that. And then as our eyes work our way up, we're drawn back and up. Right? So amazing piece of work. Just amazing piece of work. Again, just squint down a little bit, and you see how clearly the dark up front really frames all that light and gray to come. It's all important. The dark's important for the gray, the dark's important for the color, the dark's important for the white. The gray's important for the dark, the gray's important for the color, and the gray's important for the white. The color's important for the dark, the color's important for the gray, and the color's important for the white, and the white's important for the dark, the gray, and the color. The 4 of them together make our composition. So even though our overall composition is many, many, many notes, we want it to read in one sense as a single note. A single beautiful note. All right, my friends. I said 1 more minute 15 minutes ago. So we're going to stay here just a second, and then we'll say goodnight. And yeah, I think this is a pretty good magical place to leave you. All right, like always, I really appreciate you guys being here so much and listening and looking at these things. It's really so helpful. Thank you. So good to see everybody. All right. Much love to everybody. Good night, everybody.